Welcome back to Deadlines and Detours. In this episode, I was lucky enough to talk with Sarah Chilcott, the former Managing Director of the UK's National Planning Portal. We discussed transforming a government-run service to a £14 million commercial venture, what worked and what didn't in digital planning, how tech can include or exclude people if we're not careful, the reality of leadership and cultural change in high-stake public services, using digital tools to tackle housing and sustainability challenges, and why AI might be the most overused word in tech right now. Sarah also shared some lessons from her advisory work at HGKC, UK BCST, and the Bristol Housing Festival, and left me one of the best leadership riddles I've heard in a long time. It's all about frogs on a log, people. Anyway, stay tuned. See you in a few minutes.
Have you heard the riddle of the five frogs on a log?
No, but I would be wrong.
Yeah, there are five because deciding isn't the same as doing.
When I hear pivot, I can only think of the Friends episode with Ross.
You're not making this questions easy, are you?
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you the trickier one though. What would you have done differently? If you were to remove a pain point from the planning ways, what would that be? If you were to have your magic tick and you could just remove one pain point, what would that be? Okay. Today we welcome Sarah Chilcott, the former Managing Director of the UK's National Planning Portal, where she led its transformation from a government-run service to a commercial joint venture. Under her leadership, it scaled to handle thousands of planning applications daily and over 1 million visits each month. Today, she's taken on a new business advisory role as Director at HGKC, helping leadership teams navigate change and grow their businesses through innovation. She advises across sectors and still works with a number of clients in the built environment, as well as advising the UK Business Council for Sustainable Development and the Housing Festival. Her career spans digital transformation and leadership in high-stakes public services and a passion for making technology inclusive rather than exclusive, aligning perfectly with Deadlines and Detours and what we'd like to discuss here. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Matt. Glad to be here.
How are you? Always sounds good, the intros, don't they? I do like to go through them and just sort of read. I think one day someone will say something like that about me. It just sounds so fantastic. So yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, myself and Sarah worked somewhat together at the planning portal, mainly with the other entity, TerraQuest, who was part of that business. But we definitely worked on some of our projects there together. And like I say, I was always really happy when we were working together, especially with that team. It was such a well-run, great team. So how are you? How's things? How is business at the moment? Good?
Yeah, no, everything's good here. Yeah, busy, which is always good.
Fab, yeah.
Lots of challenges to get my teeth into.
Exactly. Well, it wouldn't be fun otherwise, would it? It wouldn't be fun if you were just normal day to day. So the plan is really to just run through a series of questions. We'd like to keep it nice and light, sort of not too scripted, but keep some sort of form, as it were. So I guess really let's dig in and really some of the work that you did previous to where you are now, and just how did you get to be at the planning portal, and how did that role shape itself out?
Yeah, so I joined the planning portal in 2009, I think it was. It was part of central government at that point. And I came in as they were looking at that point to bring people in from the private sector because they knew that at some point the business unit in government was going to be commercialised, it was going to be privatised. They didn't know quite when, but they wanted private sector experience in the business. So I joined as part of the leadership team, leading the engagement with the market, customers, local authorities. And I think it was 2015, we ended up being privatised and formed a joint venture between TerraQuest and DCLG, as it was then, now MHCLG, government department. And as part of that privatisation, they needed a director to step into the managing director role, and eventually that was the role that I took. So it was a long journey, and that's quite a short.
No, because I've worked in government organisations, worked in private, and all in the middle as well. So how did that feel internally when the business shifted from a government entity to a more commercial led?
Yeah, it was quite a long transition process, and we had plenty of time to adapt. Actually, it took about 2 years for the procurement process to go through. Government never moves quickly, and it was quite a challenging time actually for the team in lots of ways. We were on an IBM platform at the time, which was great when it was, when it started, but by the time we were privatized, it was really past its shelf life. So there were lots of technical challenges, lots of disgruntled customers because the system was quite flaky. And so, with lots of sort of internal challenges there, I suppose. That 2 years, we had a chance to think as a team about how we worked and what had made us successful to that point, and what in our values and our behaviours we wanted to hang on to in the private sector, what we thought would be appropriate and work for us. But also, it was a really kind of cathartic exercise to get to agree what baggage we wanted to leave behind us, and what things had actually perhaps not been as helpful as they might have been when we were in government, and certainly wouldn't be helpful in the private sector. So there was a long transition period. Once we got into the private sector, I think we were very fortunate to land where we did with TerraQuest. The values and the alignment was much better than it would have been if it had been in a purely more aggressive commercial organization. They really understood the values of customers and believed in adding value in the same way that we did. So there was some great synergies there. But I think the real difference was pace, and it was that sense in government. If government makes a decision and it's wrong, it can have massive consequences. And so everything is about making sure that you make the right decision, and that can take time. Whereas in the private sector, as you know, you make a decision, you make it quickly. If it's the wrong decision, you change course. You learn your lessons, you move on. So that was the real difference, I think.
Yeah, that sort of paralysis by decision sometimes in sort of government does slow those things down, but it's a necessary part of
Sure.
the entity, isn't it? I would say what achievement made you most proud? I'm going to jump in there and say, as I say, I worked with you. I worked with mainly your sort of teams, and surely one of the things was I don't know a single person that worked with you or sort of worked alongside you who either wanted to stay, they needed to stay because they wanted to work with you, they really enjoyed working with you. And I know people who left, one of the things that they always said to me was, I think I kind of want to leave because I really enjoy working with Sarah and stuff. So I'll give you that one. But what about yourself? What makes you the most proud about what you achieved there?
Well, that's really, really nice to hear, Matt. Thank you for that. I mean, I think the proudest thing for me was commercializing what was a government service, really. So we left government with having been funded £3 million per annum when we were in government to deliver that service. And overnight, we had no government funding, and very little commercial income. We were actually raising a little bit of commercial income in government, but only a few 100,000. And by the time I left, we had a turnover of around about 14 million. So the commercialization of that service is something that I'm very proud of, but I'm more proud of the way that we did it. And again, that comes down to the people and really stepping up and wanting to learn and adapt to their new environment and wanting to make a difference, and continuing to hold true to that ethos of doing it by adding value to customers rather than by charging because you can. So, we didn't chase the money. We did it the right way in terms of
Yeah,
how we approach customers, I think, and that was critical to the short-term success, but also will be critical to the longer term success, I'm sure.
definitely. Okay, I'm going to have to ask you the trickier one though. What would you have done differently? What would you do? Yeah, differently, given the
Yeah.
chance again.
And I mean, like, nobody's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes in my career, some of them small, some of them much bigger. Um,
Still doing it.
yeah. The biggest challenge for me, I think, was around that transition time. So I thought a lot about once we knew that TerraQuest was gonna be our new home, I thought a lot about what my value was, but I asked myself the wrong question, actually. And with hindsight, I thought about what my USP was, what made me different to the people that were already sat around that leadership team. Um, and I thought that would be the thing that added value, and actually I was wrong. The thing that made me different was that I had not only that commercial perspective, but I had an understanding of having worked in government. And government retained a stake in the business. Obviously, they were a key stakeholder in terms of our delivery, but actually, that wasn't what the business needed to drive it forward. It needed the commercial brain. and the ability to build relationships with people commercially and strategically across the market. And I should have focused on that. I should have focused on what I do that adds value, not what made me different. And that that first 90 days, as you know, it's well talked about, is a critical time in terms of forging relationships in a new role. And it was setting off on the wrong foot because of my decision in the way that I approached that made life difficult actually in terms of moving things on for quite a period of time. Um, and it would have been, I think it would have been, we got there in the end, but it would have been different if I'd taken a different approach.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, you say all of that, but then I just remind you of all the things that I just told you that everyone loved working with you, and it was a massive success, and you changed, essentially the helm of changing planning forever. I guess can you even submit a planning application paper now, or is it all digital? Is that just the thing? Is it all digital now?
No, you can submit a paper application. You have to go to the planning portal to print one off, but you can do that. Yeah, and councils don't really want it. I mean, certainly post-COVID with hybrid working, they're not in the office all the time, and actually it's just faff.
I think it's got to be one of the only sort of major things that people do. Most people either know someone or will submit some sort of planning application, and I think it's one of the only services that probably, yeah, it's just fully digitized and just happens now, more so than anything else I could probably think of. So yeah, I mean that's huge, really. And the kind of the numbers it was like, how many was it? Was it two 2,000 applications a day? Is that right? Did I get those numbers?
Yeah, so yeah, more or less. I mean, it varied obviously from day to day and weekends and weekdays and so on. But over the course of a month, probably by the time I left, we were processing around about 50,000 applications a month and handling about probably, because we were handling the payments as well, we were handling about 23 million pounds worth of payments in a month as well. So it's obviously, not making a decision on those applications, but routing
No,
that
of
to the
course,
right
no, but it's the
council.
the handling of the data and handling of all of that, just a massive, massive undertaking. One product or service that really made a difference to the application, to those applications. What do you think that would be?
I would say actually the service itself. So it was the application service and it was also the content that sat alongside it. So, back in the day when it was created in 2002, the content was the first bit done. The application service came afterwards. And just the load that took off local authorities, the fact that they didn't have to keep all of the, ever-changing planning policies up to date on their website made a huge difference. So a lot of the traffic, I mean, we were getting about 3 million page views a month, and that a lot of that traffic was coming from local councils. So, citizens trying to understand what they could do to their own homes with all planning permission. So, I think the content and the application service together really made that difference. We've talked about the volumes, and now it's so embedded in the process at council that there is no other way of they don't want applications any other way. They get some by email, but it's just, like paper applications, it's
One one
fantastic.
seven. I don't even want emails in my inbox. The thought of having an email now, I keep creating these new email addresses just so I can say, right, this one is the clean one that I'm going to use, and I'm only going to use it for X. This is going to be it. And then a month down the line or 2 months down the line, it's just full of stuff, and it's just unmanageable.
Yeah,
Email is
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
it's just the worst now. But I don't know about a solution either, and this is the problem. Maybe we need planning portals created for everyone's inbox. That's the thing. No, let's not do that.
I've talked a lot about councils, but obviously the customers for the planning portal were, the people submitting applications, whether they be homeowners or planning agents, architects. And again, for them, having that single service was transformative because before the planning portal existed, I think there were something like 12,000 different variations of planning forms across the country. So if you were submitting applications to different councils, um, it was a it was a complete nightmare. You had to find the right form, and know which questions they were gonna be asking and, which documents you needed, and everything was really, devolved, but very, very localized. And that was a nightmare for the applicants as well. So, just having that single system that was standardized and where all the applications were in one account and they could keep a track of things much more easily was, again, take it for granted now with digital systems, but back in the early 2000s, that was pretty revolutionary, I think.
Yeah, just unheard of. I mean, it is a true example of digital transformation. That word gets just pushed around all of the time, but to have a central source, a central part, and a central area where it's all dealt with and it's all known, and the fact, like you say, that people just go that way now and have been for so long. The fact that it actually is a digital transformation project that worked and it's actually beneficial for other people. I guess with that, what was there one sort of product or service or bet that you put in and it just didn't work, people didn't take to it? Is the one thing you thought, people will love this, and it just didn't happen at all?
Yes. So,
You knew that one straight away.
yes, there was some obviously there was some pain along the way. So one of the things we did much more recently, I'm gonna say maybe late 2018, if I get my dates right, was introduce, a national payment service. So up until that point, all of the application forms were standardized, but the councils were responsible for taking payment themselves, and it was causing a load of issues because marrying up those payments with those applications was difficult and things got lost. We likened it at the time to kind of buying something on Amazon and then having to put a check in the post, before somebody would post it to you. It's kind of it just didn't make sense in the newer context. And we spoke to customers to understand what their pain points were. We spoke to local authorities, we spoke to agents, we spoke to some citizens to try and understand kind of how we could add value in that process. And we came up with a great concept which enabled us to collect the money up front and pass it to the local authority, and um, and built in this fancy bit, of, I mean, it's really simple, but a clever idea, and it really added value, was the ability to redirect the payment. So the agent, rather than having to pay on behalf of the client, could redirect the link securely to their client, and the client could pay. And the client, therefore, was in control of when the application was submitted, because once the payment was made, everything was reconciled, and we sent the application off to the council. Great concept. Did our research, brilliant. However,
Yeah.
however, when it came to implementation, we wanted to engage the local authorities and we wanted them to buy into the concept. And we tried to roll it out step by step, engaging local authority at a time, as we'd done it in the early days of the planning portal. And even though all the authorities, well, most of the authorities we spoke to said, sounds like a great idea, um, there was no impetus for them to change. It required them to do something else, to make a change to their systems and how they worked and their processes. And there just wasn't enough imperative for them to do that. And so the value of having this single system for all the applicants and the agents fell over because the councils didn't act. So at the risk, we ran the risk of this really great functionality just not being implemented at all, not adding any value. So we made what was quite a bold decision at the time. And we said to councils, right, we are changing this as of this date. We're going to support you to do that. But the only way that you're going to be able to use our service after that date is to use it with this payment engine. So if you don't want us to collect this payment on your behalf, then you have to stop using the system. You won't you won't get any applications from us. And that felt like quite a brave step, I have to say.
Yeah, definitely. That's a line in the sand, if anything, isn't it? Yeah.
And we obviously, we stretched, we discussed that decision, and we kind of played through the scenarios and looked at the risks and so on. But it worked out. It really worked out. And that implementation of that service was not only transformative for our revenues, but it was also transformative uh, for the customers and for the councils. Actually, everyone's benefiting from that. And now, a few years down the line, everyone's saying, "We can't believe we weren't doing it this way before." And everyone can see the value, but it ran the risk of falling flat, just not ever coming to light, really, because that first step was not the right step with councils.
Absolutely. And I guess as well, it's a risk because another company could have come along and said, well, we'll do it the old-fashioned way. We'll let you do it, and people could have gone, yeah, we'll take the easy option. So yeah, it's a huge risk, but obviously paid off.
Mm.
That's really good. But and I see it quite often is that quite often it's easier to take the non-digital route there. We'll do it. We've always done it this way. So actually, the fact that the councils did adopt it and move forward, and that's actually yeah, again, huge transformation project
Mm.
that went right.
Eventually, but you've got to learn, haven't you? You know, it's back to that. If you're gonna, it's pace. If you're gonna do something that doesn't quite work out, then you've got to learn your lessons and you've got to change your tack, and you need to do it
Absolutely.
quickly.
Absolutely. We will move on from planning at some point. I'm sure you want to, but I definitely got one more. If you were to remove a pain point from the planning ways, what would that be? If you were to have your magic tick and you could just remove one pain point, what would that be?
You're not making this questions easy, are you? There are probably plenty of things. Anybody in planning that's listening to this back is probably screaming their own answers at this point. But um, she says, buying herself some thinking time. No, I think the biggest problem I see in planning actually is the lack of certainty in the process. So pretty much whether you're a house builder or whether you're Joe Blogg's doing an extension to your house, you what you want to know is, am I going to get planning permission to do this? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost me? Really, you need that transparency. And there's so much complexity in the planning process. It's a lot of it is about balancing different factors against each other to make a decision, to arrive at a decision. It's not black and white at all. And we're probably the only country in the world where planning works in that way. Actually, much more often it is a check against, is a compliance check against a rules base. So I think if we could automate some of our decisions around some of the smaller stuff, maybe nearly 50% of what goes through the system is home improvement stuff. It's extensions, loft
Okay.
conversions, porches, that sort of stuff. If we could get rid of that out of the system by being clear on what the rules are, and therefore homeowners having just to comply with those rules or not. It's a simple checking process, which a
Well,
computer could do.
almost a self-check almost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you would submit your plans, or your site area, so they can make some just the even AI could look at it. I hate to say it, but it could be done. And then that frees up the time for the planners to actually get on and do what they should be doing, which is the strategic planning, thinking about how they shape places, how they create these great areas where people want to live and work, which is really what planning is about fundamentally. It's not about arguing over whether you need a window there or not. So, that would be my pain point, I think. Transparency, removing that lack of certainty and using tech.
I was going to say, I sort of, we've made it this far and no one said AI. I'm going to say AI. I'm surely now that's a thing that can be written to guide people through with the knowledge. Again, I'm sort of guessing on here, but with the knowledge and the data that is held about all of the houses, everything, you probably know more about the government and different entities probably know more about my house than I do. And if I'm submitting it, they probably know half of the questions if that's linked in with different services and stuff. But yeah, that's a problem to be solved. Okay. Well, there you go. Hopefully someone's got that idea. And I think we just patented that one there, just on the chat now. Yeah. Yeah. Good. No, that's really interesting. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So moving forward, housing sustainability, your roles with AI Dash and the Housing Festival. Where does digital help us tackle climate or housing challenges like today, right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think generally I'm acting as an advisor to both those organisations, but generally there's a huge amount of activity in the tech, property tech, and the plan tech sectors. Some of that, much of it using AI, of course, but not exclusively. Those two organisations are doing some quite interesting, very innovative things, actually. I mean, AI Dash effectively is so the tool that they have in the UK, is an American company. The tool they have in the UK is helping assess the habitat on site. So there's a requirement in the planning process now that you have to, when you build something out, you have to leave the site with 10% more biodiversity than when you started. So
Good. I
you
think
have to.
that's a good thing. Yeah,
So
that seems
generally,
like the
it's
right.
exactly that, exactly that. There's some challenges around that, obviously, in terms of viability for sites, of course, but overall it is absolutely the right thing to do. But understanding your baseline, the habitat that you're starting with and what biodiversity is on that site can be actually really quite expensive and time consuming for developers. So what AI Dash do is they slightly mind blowing, I have to say, is that they use satellite imaging and high res aerial imaging and AI to identify the habitats. So they can even tell you what sort of grass is on a field using imaging that's come from space, basically.
I know I know a little bit about this. I did some work recently, looking at large scale city planning, and we started talking to a few of the players. There was a project that was doing sort of heat mapping on some of the properties and just all of that data, and then building up that large data. So yeah, I guess in that sort of space. How
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
it definitely
absolutely.
feels like this is the next big step in large data and large sort of city data. Huge,
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is huge, and, as with everything and this is genuinely AI, it's not just a kind of marketing label AI.
There's the two AIs, isn't there? They're very very much as the two AIs. Yeah.
So the really important thing is there is a human in the loop here. So they're using AI to do the analysis, but they also have a team of ecologists that check that the assumptions the AI has made and the conclusions that they've come to. And that learning from the ecologists, if they have a different view, is fed back into the model. So it's improving all the time. And the quality is really impressive, and it takes a fraction of the time that it would be to send somebody to a site and have them walk over it. In fact, it can be more accurate because they've got the historic data as well, so they can see, if it was used for grazing, for example, that will tell you that it's more likely to be a certain type of grass than another, apparently. So,
It's essentially a digital twin. Essentially, it's sort
yeah,
of digital
yeah,
twinning. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Which is
So that's fascinating. So that's live, and that's so biodiversity net gain has been an obligation in planning for a couple of years now. So that's live and running. Really interesting project. And then the housing festival is also a really interesting project. So they do lots of different things. The housing festival, they're a convener effectively in this space. They bring people together to try and tackle some of the difficult, those knotty problems we have in planning and housing. They've done quite a lot of work around social rent housing, council housing, as we used to call it, I suppose. And obviously, it's a priority for this government. And the work that the housing festival's been leading around aggregating small sites for development has actually been funded as a pilot earlier this year. So that's a really exciting time. Tech is definitely playing a part in that as well. I mean, there's an awful lot of moving parts in that model, and I haven't got time to go into them now. But part of the
yeah. Go for it. Yeah, we've got all the time in the
no,
world. Yeah,
I
no,
really
go.
haven't got time. But the bottom line is, it brings together small, like micro site, tiny sites that are council owned and that are brownfield, so derelict, old garage sites, all that sort of stuff, eyesores. It brings them together and it aggregates the sites together. And the way that tech helps here is by doing the risk analysis on those sites. So one of the councils that's working through the pilot at the moment started off with, I think, about 11,000 sites potentially in their local area just that meet those criteria. And they obviously can't
Yeah, yeah.
can't they can't can't do with 11,000 sites. So they're having to do the risk assessment on those, and biodiversity net gain being one of them, but also things like access and, the topography of the site and so on. So tech's helping there as well.
So I think we've talked a lot about sort of data there and sort of type of digital twins and stuff. What advice would you do to bring someone who has different perspectives on technology and data? And I guess Lee, maybe some of those conversation challenges maybe you had with the planning portal. Had to go back there, but yeah, that sort of technology and data forward, but that resistance to change and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I did earlier this year, actually, I was involved in facilitating an event which was being run by the GLA and MHCLG, bringing together local councils and prop tech providers. And they got them in a room, and really the purpose of the event was to build some understanding of the different challenges that the different organisations are under, and to find a way to help them work better together. And that was really interesting, but I think it underlined kind of what you and I probably already know around the transformation, which is, it always has to start with the why. So
Absolutely.
technology is never the point in any of this. Technology is absolutely how you might get things done, and there may be other ways of doing that as well. But
Thousand
but
times.
technology and digital generally is an enabler. It isn't the purpose. So I think really understanding where you've got common ground, understanding what the why is, and building some empathy around the challenges in terms of how you get there are really critical, whether you've got people physically in the same room or whether you're just trying to get them aligned to a common objective. So I think that's definitely where I think you have to start. Building that common understanding is critical, and recognizing that actually you're trying to achieve the same things rather than fighting about, whether this tech solution is actually better than that tech solution, which is
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't think I've ever worked on a single project I've been brought into where the technology is the solution. It's always a process, or it's always it's and again, it's the why. Is that what are you actually trying to do? And in my space is a little bit different, but it might be that we're losing customers, or we're falling behind, or we're inefficient. It's costing us money. 9 times out of 10, a new solution's not gonna fix that. It's the actual
mm,
root cause, and sometimes the actual solution's absolutely fine. So it is that. It's you're absolutely right. Technology, we need that technology, and the technology is amazing. It can certainly streamline stuff, but rarely does the tech piece actually fix anything at all, isn't it? It's ways of thinking, and it's the why. Yeah, it's actually the why. I'll take that one. Yeah.
but yeah, start with
Yeah, I think, so I had a question for you that sort of followed up really, and I think it falls into exactly that. So I'm just going to kind of just roll straight into it, because I've seen yourself, you talk on sort of LinkedIn and different blogs that you put out, and you said technology can exclude if used badly. What are the risks you see into the tech and this? And I guess it's a follow on from this conversation.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of logical consequence, I suppose, of build it and they will come, in the sense that, you don't just stick a bit of tech in and expect everyone just to embrace it. That's not how it works. That's not how humans work. We know
no,
that.
no,
Both of
no,
us know
no,
the scars from that.
no.
But I think, you know, certainly if I think about public services, there's long been discussions around making sure that you don't exclude groups that do not have access to technology. So making digital services digital by default was the phrase back in the day, but ensuring that people that don't have tech can still access those services. So I think there's a point of principle there, I suppose, around excluding certain communities, which has always been true. But we're back to the AI point again, I think, for me, is that actually the risks around AI and some of the bias that's being built into some of the models actually has real opportunity, if we don't get a grip of it, to really reinforce the exclusion of certain models, certain people, certain groups. I was watching a program last night. They were talking about facial recognition and how it doesn't, in its initial form at least, didn't work as well on dark skin because it had been trained on white men.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
you
So
know,
so
you need,
already an algorithm's out
yeah.
before you even start. Yeah,
So you need with AI in particular, we've got a real opportunity, but we've also got a real risk if we don't approach it in the right way. So, um,
absolutely. Couple of things there. I guess one of them was, yeah, AI not being used correctly. I was speaking with previously Jamie on one of the earlier podcasts, who sort of gave me a complete sort of, I didn't even think about it, but people using AI to create content, which is great. But if I ask a question and you ask a question, chances are we're going to get the same answer. So then, really, you're just creating this single narrative without any input. And of course, it makes perfect sense. But until someone sort of says it, you
yeah,
don't really think. And again, another thing that I definitely did early in my career was very much like, well, don't worry about everyone else who haven't got phones, or don't worry if they haven't got the latest Mac and different things. They'll be fine. They'll be thinking it's just a naive way to think, and you just realize, and it's not till you've worked on a few projects and you've seen the impact, that you think how much actually exclusion there is. And even just totally a couple of days ago, I was talking with my parents about some insurance or something, and I was like, well, just do it online and send me some of the detail, text me some of the details, and help it out. My mother was insistent she was going to write it down and print it out and all of this. So
Mhm.
it's, and that's just normal. That isn't, they're not some sort of like Luddites. They are, but they're not. They are just everyone else
Yeah.
over the age of a certain bracket, or a certain thing that people still feel like they want that
Yeah.
physical thing. So you've always got to think about that. And you and I and different people will bound around AI. I think there's still people out there that doesn't even know the acronym for AI or what it is.
Mm.
Again, my dad, I was showing AI ChatGPT. Now you can talk to it, have
Yeah.
that conversation, and it's so natural. And he was like, well, who are you just talking to? I thought, well, it's just ChatGPT. And it didn't click. It clicked eventually, but for a few seconds, it didn't click. It just assumed that I was
Yeah.
having a conversation with someone. So you've got to remember that, yeah, that because we're in it sometimes. And I
Yeah.
think that goes back to what you said around tech, that quite often development teams and everything go, well, we've got this bit of software, this is going to save everything. And they rarely have asked the question, does anyone actually want it? Does anyone need it? And what are the actual problems? So
Yeah.
yeah,
100%.
yeah. And I just think that's it. Okay, so have you got any stories of yourself trying to get buy-in from sort of digital tools in skeptical organizations, or have they always gone, yes, Sarah, of course, get that straight in. We'll press the buy button now.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, it's back to planning portal days, isn't it? I suppose. I think my fallback um, with any kind of change actually, and tech adoption is as fundamental a change as anything. Is I always go back to John Cotter, who I'm sure you'll be aware of. Many of the people listening to this podcast will be. If you haven't checked his change model out, it was from I think 1980s. It's a long time ago, but it still holds true, really. In that, again, you start with a vision, you start with the urgency, you identify early adopters, and you build momentum from there. It's about how you it's we talk about it in tech now in the same way, when we're talking about development, we talk about MVP, and then we talk about iterating. It's the same principle, really. You prove the concept as early as you can, and then you start to deliver that value, and then you build more buy-in from there. And that's exactly what happened with the planning portal in its early days, and it's still true today, really. You don't approach a company. I mean, I'm not selling digital solutions, but you don't approach a company and say, "Actually, we can do all these things for you, but it's gonna cost you £2 million because you're gonna get shown the door." You start with something that's a real problem for them, that's a small piece of work that adds value, that they can see the value from, and then that gives them confidence to carry on. So I think that's really important. Um, the other I guess the other lesson I'd say from planning portal days is that, without wanting to go back to the first bit of the conversation, is that some people just aren't ready. You might be passionate about seeing what somebody could do, and I find this in my advisory work now. You might be in a fortunate position where you're looking at things slightly from an external perspective, and you can really see the challenges and the blockers and the opportunities to change, but not everybody else can see that for whatever reason. And sometimes you just have to accept that they're not gonna be on the same page as you, and you have to walk away. I think the last council we had at the planning portal didn't join until about 10 years after the service was live, and bluntly, it was because the person moved on, and that person was the blocker.
That sort of new leadership comes in
Yeah,
and has a new way of thinking. I think, and again, when certainly my world, but when you're in this sort of tech space and stuff, I mean, a friend of mine the other day said, see all that stuff you post about digital transformation, it all looks fab, but I don't know what digital transformation is. And for someone who spent a long time trying to make it simple for everyone to understand, I'd missed my own narrative, that I just assumed that everyone knew what digital
yeah,
transformation is. And when I explained it, I thought, oh yeah, no, yeah, we need that. I know loads of people that need
yeah,
that. And I was thinking, God, excluding everyone with this idea that everyone is where we are, is in that thought process, and most people aren't. Most people want to be advised. And again, I think that's going back to that asking the question is why, and kind of what
yeah,
are your business problems.
yeah,
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so today HGKC,
yes,
tell me a bit about those guys and some of the work
yeah.
you do there.
Yeah, so a bit of a history, a backstory here.
Mm.
So I talked about the pain very briefly, but it was very painful of the 2 years of transition from government into the private sector for the planning portal.
Yeah.
One of the things government did to support us as a leadership team through that was they engaged some consultants, and they were the people that helped us with the thing I was talking about earlier around the culture and the shift and how that was going to, how that was going to change. And it was really important at the time because it it gave the team a feeling of some control. Actually, when we had very little control, like, we didn't even know if we were going to have jobs at the end of those 2 years. So it was really important to have something that we felt we had ownership of and control. And HGKC were the consultants that came in and helped us through that. So through that process. So I've known the guys there for 10, 12 years, um, and we kept in touch. They're a really good bunch of guys, and now since I left the planning portal last year, um, I've joined them as a director. So the business works with business owners. So we're working mostly in the SME sector, and we work with mostly with business owners and directors around all the stuff we've been talking about really, around growing businesses, about tackling challenges, about whether that be leadership or people or culture, or whether it be more sort of structural things, technology, maybe. Um, and we help owners prepare their businesses for succession, for their own exit effectively. So we don't do the selling of the business, but we make sure that when they get to the point where they want to sell their business or pass it on to the next generation or whatever it might be, all the ducks are in a row, I guess, to use the cliche. So everything is really optimized to make that business fly in the future and maximize their sales price if that's what they want to do. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So I've been working there probably about 18 months now. And it's yeah, and it and it's fantastic. It's great to be able to use the experience that I've had in my career, but also, to learn from others. I needed to kind of build some more learning into my life. It wasn't that I certainly didn't feel like I had all the answers, but, I'd been at the planning portal for 15 years and, having a new challenge and a new way to stretch your brain is really important.
It's transformative. I think, yeah, moving to any different entity and stuff. It's a mind shift. It's a fresh way of thinking, and I think it stirs up bits of the brain that were dormant because they're not necessarily needed. And I think you become just infinitely a better version of yourself with a bit of a change like that. Definitely,
Yeah.
that is transformation.
Yeah.
That's not digital transformation. It's just transformation,
Yeah.
isn't it? It really is that. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So then, with growth and kind of innovation for that transformation, what do you find are the biggest obstacles? I know you sort of said somewhere around sort of like lack of knowledge and lack of understanding of some of the tools, but are there any other things that you can think of that stand in the way of people achieving kind of that innovation piece?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's interesting, and this is one of the things I've enjoyed most, I suppose, is that people use it quite a lot in a glib way, and I really mean it genuinely. It is a real privilege to be able to go in and work with an organisation as an external advisor. It's also really, really refreshing to be able to walk into an organisation, to be able to see things that you can't see. I mean, I've been there, and it's very difficult to see when you're on the inside and you're up against it. But to be able to have that different perspective is amazing. So that's really, yeah, it's really a privilege to be able to do that. But I think fundamentally, a lot of the challenges that businesses face, whether they be in the planning, construction, built environment sector or elsewhere, are largely the same. Actually, we come up against the same kind of challenges all the time in terms of, businesses wanting to grow but not quite needing to add another post in yet and being careful about how the costs. And so, it's all about similar kind of the challenges. We put out a LinkedIn post earlier in the year on, we call evergreen challenges for businesses and in terms of growth. So that's worth a look at if you haven't seen it already. But fundamentally, the challenges around growth and innovation come back to what we've talked about already, which is people and mindset, really. So a lot of the work that we do is around working with business owners to understand what their ambition is, what their vision is, what their mission is, what their targets are, what their strategy is. But then fundamentally, it's about how that is communicated with staff and shared with staff so they can buy into that process, but also how you create a culture which embraces change, which is really difficult to do. Because, there's not everybody, but a large degree of human nature is about being comfortable in the in kind of what you're used to. Um, so, working on a culture that genuinely says, actually, there's a better way of doing this. Why am I doing it this way? And rewarding people that think like that, and rewarding those suggestions that come forward from the team in terms of how you can improve how you work or what you deliver to customers is really ultimately what you want to get to, rather than that sort of fixed mindset of, no, we can't do it because that's not how we do things around here, which is, a phrase I'm sure we're both familiar with and heard in different organizations.
Heard that many times very early on in my career. I was always like, no, no, that can't be right. And then you're junior and you're thinking, well, maybe that is right. Maybe it should all just be done like this. And I knew always had a deep inner feeling that no, it's got to be different.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that is it. Is the key, isn't it? And so many companies just don't listen because and I know there's factors. We got that bottom line to hit. We've got X, Y, and Z. But any great company and any of the big businesses that truly succeed, that they ask people to come up with the new ideas and stuff. And I think some of the big sort of the American tech firms have these Fridays where you come up with almost like playground areas where stuff. And I know again people think, yeah, I know, but that's costing. What does that cost our team? But actually, what it could save your team in the next big idea that comes up, and if people feel like they can take that to the director. And I think and you ran that at the planning portal. I think your door was always open, and if anyone could come in with an idea and have that conversation with you, and that's it. But it's rare, and you don't see it. I'm going to try and get some free consultancy advice from you here. And what would your key takeaway be for any leader thinking about how to grow their business?
Yeah, so I'm stuck between two, so I'm going to give you two takeaways. There you go. Double the value.
Even better.
Double the value. So I think the first thing is recognize you don't have all the answers. So as we said before, nobody's perfect. Nobody knows everything. So it's about, as a leader, for me, it was always about understanding how I could help the team be their best on the one hand, but also being open to different perspectives. And so I think it's about asking the right questions, being open to asking different questions of different people. So whether that be your team, whether it be your peers, and people that you're networked with, somebody who's even a friend, it's somebody who's not in your business, an external advisor, of course, or a non-exec director, anybody, it doesn't really matter. But the more people that you can ask and get different perspectives from, the richer your decision making is going to be. So that would be my first tip, and my second one would be stop thinking and start doing. Really, I mean, I think there's a place for thinking, and you do need to think that through, but you can be stuck in inertia if you spend too much time thinking. And again, we put a blog. Have you heard Have you heard the riddle of the five frogs on a log? No?
To hear the riddle of the five frogs on the log, please.
Okay.
This might be the title of the podcast. The riddle of the five frogs on the log. Go for it.
Yeah. So there are five frogs on a log, and one decides to jump off. How many frogs are left on the log?
I'm gonna say 4 frogs.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm gonna be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, there are 5 because deciding isn't the same as doing. So
see,
okay.
I love that. That is great. That is brilliant. Yes.
Yeah. So you think about something, you decide to do it, you still don't necessarily do it. And actually, again, that's the joy of being an external advisor, is we can work with people to work out what the decision is. But then we also can hold them to account to make sure they actually act, because it's all too easy just to get sucked back into all the other million things that need to be done.
I'm just still thinking about the frog and the fact that I got the question wrong. But Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
great.
Yeah, but
No, that's fine. I had the same thing on another one as well. Someone asked me a question, I got it completely wrong. So this is brilliant. This is great. Okay, thank you so much. I'm always happy to speak with yourself, and you know, and I'm always giving you a shout to say, you know, want to chat. And I think that really does touch into what you said there in one of your points around just talking to people who you trust and who would give you an honest answer as well. You know, I know loads of people that will tell me what I want to hear. Actually, sometimes having a good and people away from the industry and different things. I think that's always good as well, because sometimes, like you say, you can't see the wood for the trees if you're in deep in it. Okay, so just some quick fire fun then. So overused buzzword in digital transformation. What would that be
that's
for you?
easy. AI. We've done it
AI,
before.
absolutely.
Everyone's AI, even the stuff that isn't.
So, worst stakeholder phrase that you actually love.
God. Yeah, that's got to be low hanging fruit.
Low
I
hanging
cringe
fruit.
every time I say it, but I do say it.
Yeah, low hanging fruit. I'm trying to think what mine would be.
Yeah, I thought about pivot, but I actually do hate that.
Pivot. Well, when I hear pivot, I can only think of there's a Friends episode with Ross trying to put a sofa up, and you're shouting pivot, pivot on the thing. Oh, I'll see if I can get a little
Thanks.
GIF
That's
to
going
go
to
over
help
the
no
thing
end.
there.
Yeah.
One tool that you just absolutely can't live without.
Bored. Does it have to be a business tool? So I'm a Microsoft girl. That's not very cool to say, is it? But I struggle with. Well, I don't struggle. I don't enjoy using Google's things. I prefer Microsoft things. But the app, if I can be a bit cheeky and not really answer the question, the app that I couldn't live without at the moment is Duolingo. So I'm a
Duolingo.
linguist by background. Didn't know if you know that.
I
French
did
and
not know that.
German. French and German
Did
is
not that.
what I did at university.
Really?
French, German, and politics actually. But yeah, so I'm a
I
linguist. Love languages.
adore Duolingo. My only experience of it is my daughter, end of sort of primary school, loved Spanish, just loved Spanish. Don't know whether it was Dora, too much Dora the Explorer or something, but just loved Spanish. Took it upon herself to start this Duolingo. I didn't really know what it was at the time. I kind of heard of it, but I just thought it was just another app that just existed on it. And then from that to, and it's not just solely that, but massively lent towards it. From that to where she is now, the last couple of years, she's got like excellence in Spanish award and all these things. And great teaching and a commitment, but I do genuinely believe that Duolingo is just really good. So I'm going to do Italian. That's the one that I want to learn.
Oh, nice.
I just feel like it would just make me more continental. I like the idea. It's a cool one, isn't it? That's just cool. Talking about cool, I get it with Google Sheets and stuff. I'm trying to use those. I don't think I like them. I think I like an app installed on, I'm a Mac guy, so I'm slightly cool there, but I like an app that I can click and it's there. I know that's not the way it's going to be. And I know I need to move my documents to the cloud. I'm happy for them to be saved there. I just don't like using cloud-based editing tools when it comes to things like that. And quite often, I talk to a couple of younger sort of friends who are in the space, and I always say, does it have a Mac app? Does it? And they're like, no, just use the cloud. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do that. I just want the app. Is there an app? I don't know what it is. I think it's just, I just feel safer. And there's nothing wrong with Microsoft. Actually, Word is and things like that. They're just great, right? They just work. They're solid tools. There's some great other ones and stuff. Final question. This is a really, really tough, tricky one. Tea, coffee, or something else? What's your favorite?
Oh, well, that depends on the time of day, doesn't it? Coffee, definitely. I'm not a tea drinker, really. Coffee, black, strong. Very, very, like a nice coffee. Later in the day, maybe a nice glass of wine, if I'm allowed to say that.
You can definitely say that. You can definitely say that. It's Friday, and it's going to be gin o'clock at some point today. I can tell you that. So, yeah, definitely.
And the sun's shining here. I don't know when this is going out, and the sun might be shining, but making the most of it.
It really is nice. It really is nice. I'm just hoping the next few days are just like this before we hit the dreaded autumn. And then I definitely need the sun. I'm a sun boy. Sarah, thanks so much. I always enjoy our chats, and to actually have that recorded and useful to other people. I always find everything you say fascinating, and I always feel like I know nothing when I speak to you. So always a genuine pleasure to talk to you. So thank you so much, and speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been
Bye-bye.
great. Good to catch up.
Thanks.
Bye.